International Justice Mission is a not-for-profit that exists in 26 countries around the world to protect the poor from violence. International Justice Mission works primarily with government partners to help strengthen justice systems across the world to ensure that people who are trafficked, exploited and held in conditions of modern slavery have access to justice. In particular, we love working with prosecutors, law enforcement and aftercare providers to ensure that perpetrators are held accountable for their actions and that victims and survivors can get access to restoration. International Justice Mission recognises that modern slavery is a complex issue and needs to be addressed worldwide. While we don't do casework specifically here in Australia, we do a number of campaigns to empower the Australian community to ask their government and to ask their friends and family to take leadership on this issue. We're all connected to modern slavery, partially through supply chains and the way in which labour exploitation and child labour might affect the clothes and the goods that we buy, but also because we're all connected as human beings, and a human being exploited in another country should be a concern for you and me, even if we are not ourselves subject to that exploitation. International Justice Mission works on a variety of types of modern slavery across the world, but particularly our casework in the Asia Pacific region focuses on online sexual exploitation of children and trafficking, forced labour and slavery. The most interesting thing about modern slavery is that it can really have so many insidious forms. Often we think about slavery as being the transatlantic slave industry, where you had people shackled and kept confined physically in a space and unable to leave their place of work, belonging and owned illegally by someone else. But the forms of modern slavery that we see now in our casework are so much more subtle and hidden away. I guess one form in particular that is rapidly rising across Southeast Asia that we are doing a lot of active casework on is trafficking into forced criminality into online scamming centres, where people from across the region are being deceived into these scamming centres and forced to scam people like you and me and other developed countries across the world, but not because they're willingly wanting to do that, but because they're being forced and unable to leave. Their passports are taken from them, they're not able to freely contact friends and family or ask for help and assistance. And they're also, asked to repay all the money that was potentially incurred by the employer for their travel fees. These sorts of situations of not being able to know and understand the nature of the work that you're going to perform, not being able to leave a situation of work, being forced to work very long hours and not having personal freedoms. This is the core of what modern slavery involves. And while it might not look quite the same as the type of slavery and exploitation you might see in movies and films, it is just as devastating to the individuals who experience it. Online sexual exploitation of children is an incredibly sad and egregious form of modern slavery. We see so many children involved in it. A recent study of ours estimated that there is approximately 500,000, that's 1 in 100 children in the Philippines are affected by online sexual exploitation. It's incredible to us that this is still an issue in our day and age and is facilitated by ever-emerging forms of technology. It's something that I think we need to do something about here in Australia and in the Philippines. Given that modern slavery involves such a large amount of people across the world who are exploited, almost 50 million, I think was the latest estimate, there needs to be action done to address it at all levels, individual, business and government. Governments need to take responsibility for their own supply chains and the goods that they source from overseas, but also have a key role, especially the Australian government, in the investment in public justice systems and other government responses to trafficking and slavery that is happening within each and every country. And that includes Asia Pacific. In particular, the Australian government has brought in the Modern Slavery Act in 2019, and that has been a great step forward in bringing better collaboration between business and government on how to address modern slavery, specifically in the supply chain response. International Justice Mission is also calling for a greater emphasis on a sustainable solution, which is to invest in public justice systems that work alongside and support corporate responses in country to how they treat their workers. In particular, we would love to see greater investment from corporates and governments in that space, because that is a long-term sustainable change that we can see as assisting workers in the long term, while also understanding and knowing their supply chains and being open and transparent with consumers. Because how else can you and I make a difference if we don't actually know what is happening and the kind of power we hold in our supply chains when we make a choice to choose one product over another? Information is crucial and key in this discussion and how we move modern slavery forward, but it is not the only way to address it. And we as a consumer, but also as a member of humanity across the world, need to be thinking about ways in which we can step up, know about the issue, demand a better response, not only from corporates, but also from governments who can support action against modern slavery. It's important in this world and time to not feel like you as an individual don't have power. I think with everything happening in the geopolitical space and all the humanitarian crisis and the war, the fighting, and the overwhelming feeling that there is so much information out there, how do I even know what's real and what to do? That fear and that panic is real, and I think that can sometimes paralyze individuals to think, I don't need to do anything about an issue, someone else can do that, and kind of pass on that responsibility. But in this digital age, when you have the power in your hands on a social media platform to amplify an issue and to talk about what you care about to your family and friends, but also potentially to a worldwide audience and for that to get traction, I think that that is a huge advantage in this day and age for personal advocacy, and that you should feel that you can take a role and have a voice on issues that you care about, and that you can expect there will be a movement that could grow from that, or that could be part of it. I would encourage you to engage with our socials, International Justice Mission Australia, and find the campaigns that we're running, from forced scamming to online sexual exploitation of children on the Children on the Pictures campaign that we ran recently, to petitions, to asking RJM to interact with you in your workplace or your school, your university, and to present on the issues. I think it's important to actually get closer to the work and to not shy away from the issue, even though it's scary and sometimes a little bit big and really quite sad. But to know that there's hope and that there's a possibility to be involved and to move the dial on a lot of these issues, I think is a crucial component of what IJM looks to do when it engages with you and when it engages more broadly with the Australian.